All right, welcome back here. Jordy Culotta Show, built by R&B Builders, as always, live here on this Thursday. Make sure to hit that like button, share button, comment button if you don't mind. Subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed. We were telling you, so many of you come through here and watch the content. We appreciate that. We love it. Get some of the numbers. A lot of you that come and visit are not subscribers. Subscribe to the channel if you don't mind. Hit that bell. You get notified when we go live or when content comes out, and you want to keep up with our next piece of content. Billy Embody talking about recruiting. Lots to get to with Bill here, as it's been an active June for LSU and the rest of the college football world. Billy, happy belated 4th of July. Good morning. How are you?
Doing well, guys. How are you?
What a great hat.
Oh, you can get it for $1.
Got mine at home.
You can get it for free when you join the Bengal Tigers.
That's what it is. Even you know what's better than $1? Free 99.
Free.
Exactly.
Billy, it's good to talk to you. Good to see you. We were talking about the piece that you guys are running over on 3, which we are encouraging everybody to get over to the Bengal Tiger and get their subscription. But you guys are diving into the roster, ranking the top 40 players on it. But you're also talking about some offensive, defensive, and newcomers of the year. The newcomer of the year, I think, is pretty – look, Harold Perkins and Jaden Daniels, tough to argue those two in offense and defense. Newcomer of the year, I think, is a spot that, look, you can go in any direction. I love Deshaun Walmack, like you guys said. We brought up Lance Hurd and been talking about the offensive line. And even a guy like Kamorian Pimpton, who I've heard since being on campus that they have fallen even deeper in love with, is a name that could pop. Who do you like in this freshman class than some of the obvious suspects that could be dark horses here?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm a big Deshaun Womack fan, so it is hard for me to shy away from him or Lance Hurd. I saw Lance a bunch when he was coming up through, his recruitment and his rise to a 5-star for us at On3. But just kind of rewatching the spring game, like a lot of people do over the course of this dead time of summer now that it was really only baseball, which was great. But you got to fill the void somehow. JV and Toviano and Jaylen Brown jump out to me, and for two different reasons. I felt like JV and Toviano, his versatility that he brought to the table, his college-ready size, they could kind of play him all over. And I think when you're a freshman, you want to give coaches the most opportunities to get you on the field. And it's kind of like how they found a way for Harold Perkins to get on the field. Yes, Harold Perkins was a 5-star. We knew the talent that he had coming in. But I think he even surprised them with how well he could rush the passer and affect opposing quarterbacks. And so that was how he found himself on the field as much as he did. And JV and Toviano is a very smart player. He comes from one of the top programs in Texas. It's like a small college over there. And I think with his, college-ready size and versatility, I think he's somebody that's kind of a dark horse newcomer of the year on defense. And then I saw Jaylen Brown at LSU camp. And I saw him at the All-American Bowl, and I saw him the first week of his senior season. And the transformation that he has made, and that was mid-June, is really impressive. So for him to early enroll and get some of the time that he did, he's got that top-end speed. I think the wide receiver room, you've got Malik Neighbors, you've got Brian Thomas, you'll have Aaron Anderson if he's healthy, you've got other guys in there, Kyron Lacey. That'll certainly factor in, but with his speed, with his competitiveness, that was something that I always liked. Never shied away from going to camps and competing. And now that he's kind of adding a little bit of size to him, I think Jaylen Brown could be a dark horse newcomer of the year on offense.
What a player you would have to be to strike into this wide receiver group as a freshman, right? I mean, if one of these guys can crack it, look out. You're talking about a great one. Billy, you're a great reference for this. You remember the days where offensive line recruiting around here was, it was a crapshoot, right? You just kind of like crossed your fingers and just kind of put a blindfold on and was just hoping to get somebody. Why has it changed so drastically over the last 2 cycles? And what have you made of what they are doing on the offensive line? And then, I guess we'll throw Ethan Callaway in there, who was the latest to commit, the 4-star offensive tackle out of North Carolina last week.
Yeah, I think a couple things. We've seen Louisiana step up and give LSU some really nice guys to recruit in the sense of Will Campbell and Emory Jones. And Lance Hurd, Tyree Adams, guys like that. Even Kyrie Lee in this class in 2024, he's dropped a considerable amount of weight. He really looks the part of a guy who, looks, college ready in a sense. He's got to fill out, but the fact that he dropped all that weight is so encouraging just from kind of projecting him. But I think Louisiana has given them some nice opportunities there, which has been critical, I think. And LSU has taken advantage of those. And Brad Davis has played a big part in that as well. And I think Brad Davis, out of, you could kind of say all the recruiters on staff, he casts a really wide net and gets a ton of guys to campus. And especially relative for the amount of guys you want to bring in, year out on the offensive line. And he's been able to come up with some really big lands because of that. DJ Chester was a guy that they beat out Michigan for. They held off an Auburn push. I think Florida State hosted him. And he was a silent commitment in July. And sometimes silent commits don't work out. But they just kind of stayed the course. He kept recruiting him, did a great job with the family, and they pull him out of Georgia. Same thing with Paul Mabenga. He was a silent commitment to another school, though, in Michigan. And on his official visit to LSU, Brad Davis really turned the tide there and was able to get him on board. And he's a nice upside prospect. Ethan Callaway is somewhat similar to DJ Chester this cycle in the sense that, there was quietly confidence behind the scenes at LSU that they were going to get him the entire time. They were his first FBS offer, coming on the heels of a Campbell offer. No disrespect to them, but not many SEC programs are willing to throw out the offer when that might be the first offer. And LSU did that, and their scouting department deserves a lot of credit for that. But Brad Davis just got on him and was able to pull him all the way out of North Carolina. He's a top 100 prospect for us at On 3, and I think he's somebody that fits the bill of a developmental guy with what they have at tackle with Lance Hurd, with Tyree Adams, Will Campbell, Emory Jones, whoever you want to kind of plug in at those tackle spots. Ethan Callaway can take some time and develop because he didn't grow up playing football. He's only been playing for about 3 years. This will be his 4th season. And one of those seasons was shortened by COVID. So he's only played 23 football games. And for him to be a top 100 prospect after LSU evaluated him that early is really impressive. So I think some great evals, some really nice recruiting hits as far as who they targeted. And they've come up with a completely rebuilt offensive line. There aren't any guys that are tipping the scales at about 350 pounds, and that was something that was being celebrated in the building. This is a group that is athletic, and also you could kind of play them at different spots. A lot of tackles that are being pushed inside the guard, which is what you want. So it's just been an incredible rebuild.
What's the realistic chances of one of these newcomers, one of these freshmen playing this year?
I think it's hard. It's hard when you have the group that they have coming back. But I think the way Brad Davis has allowed these guys to sometimes sink or swim, and Will Campbell gave them no choice last year. We know that. Yeah. But Emory Jones really emerged as the year went on and became reliable. And I think this next season will be a big one for him. I saw some pictures of him. He just looks like he's remade his body in a big way. It might take a little bit of either bad luck with some injuries to see one of these guys really end up starting a bunch of games, or a step from someone maybe we aren't expecting, either a DJ Chester who's physically ready to go and is a really, really bright kid, or a Lance Hurd who's just so talented that he kind of gives them no choice, and they say, you know what, we're going to live with, either some technique mistakes or some learning on the fly and things like that. But Zalance is just such a big dude and so athletic to boot, as well as his length. You're kind of in a good spot. It's a good problem to have, but it is a group that returns a good bit of guys who have played a lot of college football, and that's always kind of tough to break through too.
Billy, from one group of the offensive line who rarely puts out talent on a consistent level in the state, back to the defensive line, who it is very usual for the state to be producing high-end talent. The number one player in the state, or by some services, number one player in the state, is a defensive lineman out of Acadiana and Dominic McKinley. LSU has made a position change, a coaching change at defensive line. How has that transition gone with McKinley, and where do things stand with him?
Yeah, I think the thing with Dominic McKinley that stands out is how quiet he is on the recruiting front. He doesn't necessarily enjoy talking about it. He'd rather talk about what he does in the classroom. He wants to do computer science. He has a 3.8 GPA over there at Acadiana, and he opens up a little bit more on that. But when it comes to his recruitment, you can read some of the tea leaves. Now, some people in the circle of the Texas Longhorns think they made a huge impression, and that was the final official visit of June. Ohio State also hosted him, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. All 4 schools in June that hosted him for official visits felt like they made a big impact. And LSU is trying to hold that official visit for when he decides, maybe closer to early signing day, and things like that. I think with Dominic McKinley, because there's so little actual face-to-face communication about his recruitment with him, or even just his camp in general, he's going to be a guy that people speculate on, people, opine on where he's leaning or try to read tea leaves and things like that. And so he's going to be one of those guys that there's going to be a lot of buzz from different schools. From what I've gathered over the last couple months, as his recruitment has picked up with official visits and things like that, is I think A&M and Oklahoma are the biggest threats to get him out of the state of Louisiana. And LSU is having to play a long game here because you had a change in Jimmy Lindsey coming in. They've had to kind of reshuffle their plan because of that. And for a guy who really blew up over the last, I guess, 8 months or so, coming off of that impressive junior year, you just have to find your footing in the recruitment. And sometimes it takes all the way to an early signing day to do that. So I feel like LSU is very much in it. I do think there's a strong chance that he stays in state, but A&M and Oklahoma are the two that I've kind of heard that have also done a really nice job recruiting him and making it at least attractive to him to potentially leave the state. So with a 5-star defensive lineman in SEC country, it's about as competitive as it gets when it comes to recruiting. I really believe that's the toughest position when it comes to battles that any program in the SEC wants to win and will do whatever it takes. So it's going to be interesting to see that one play out, but it's too early to call where he's going to end up.
Another one high on LSU's board that I know Frank Wilson is paying specific attention to is Wardell Mack, the DB out of John Ehret. Where's LSU stand right now with Mack?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of buzz coming off of that Texas visit that he took to close out June, and the Longhorns got red hot to end the month of June as well. But I do feel like he's going to take it out a little bit longer. He's kind of not waffled, but said he wants to take it to the fall, or he might decide before his senior season. And for LSU, it's on them to win that battle when it comes down to signing day. So I think we saw that initial buzz around Texas kind of fade, that they were going to get him and get him committed. I even checked around with some folks in Texas that kind of have their ear to the ground on that stuff, and a lot of that initial buzz that he was going to commit maybe has died down. But LSU, Florida, and Texas do seem to be the 3 contenders right now. And I do like LSU and Frank Wilson to win out in the end. And there's a lot of coaches around the country that monitor different recruitments and have been involved with them at various points. And some of the guys that maybe aren't necessarily involved anymore will be the first ones to tell you they'd be hard pressed to bet against Frank Wilson losing that one. Mm-hmm. So like you said, I think LSU is prioritizing him in the big way. And a lot of the times Frank Wilson has been able to get those players and their families on board and kind of shut things down. That's what Frank has really built his career on is recruiting and keeping guys in Louisiana for LSU. And so this is a big one for him. He's right in New Orleans, and he's got to have him. So I think they'll be able to get him as well.
Billy, one of the schools that is loaded this year, you've done a really good job of following the school and the recruits there, is Duncanville High School over in Texas. They've got some high priority guys for LSU, including Colin Simmons, who's the top edge rusher. They've got Caden Durham, who's one of the top running backs in the country. And then Alex January is a big defensive player that I know was high on LSU's board and is committed to Texas. Where is LSU as far as these big three in Duncanville is concerned?
Yeah, I think Alex January, LSU gave it a great run. I had a chance to talk a lot with his dad before his decision, and right even up until the day before, Alex was talking to a lot of the LSU defensive linemen and just kind of chatting with them about, what it's like to be there. And I think there was a genuine interest, but ultimately his dad played at Texas, and I think that just won out, when it came to his recruitment. But as far as Caden Durham and Colin Simmons go, LSU is in a battle for both. Caden Durham seems like he's down to LSU, Oklahoma, are the main two programs that are really involved there. And there's some buzz he could have, been committing to Oklahoma coming off his Oklahoma official visit. But instead, LSU punches back and gets him on campus for an unofficial. I'm intrigued to see if he takes it to the fall. He's talked about it, but he's also thrown around some programs that maybe aren't as involved as it seems like, at least reading the tea leaves. So maybe he could pop back either up or down, depending on which one he goes to, for another visit at the end of July. And I think that visit will be key to maybe getting, if you're Oklahoma or if you're LSU, getting him on board maybe before the season goes. So he's LSU's really lone running back target in 2024. That's the guy they're pushing for. They're all in on him, and he's really, really, really impressive. So I think LSU's in it. I think the visit showed a lot from him to come back, but he also has a ton of ties to Oklahoma. His family's up there. His mom went there and ran track. Like I said, there was more buzz that he had actually committed to Oklahoma on that visit. So that's always something to monitor, and we'll be paying close attention to that. But one that is going to go way into the fall, and most likely to the early signing day is Colin Simmons, the number one edge rusher in the country. And I think we're seeing this one whittle down pretty quickly. He took an Alabama official visit. I don't think he's going there. He took an Oregon, I think unofficial or official, but I don't think he's going that far. Same with Miami. But Texas A&M, and LSU, I think are the three players here. And A&M and Texas probably stand the best chance right now. You look at what they're able to do just from a location perspective. Colin Simmons' brother does have autism, so a big piece for him is making it as easy as he can on his little brother and his mom to kind of navigate that when it comes to seeing him and seeing games and things like that. So I think that's a big piece that when it ultimately comes down to it will be one of, if not the biggest factors, because wherever he goes, I think he's going to be 3 and out. I think he could be a guy that has a Caleb Von Chaston type early impact. And if everything goes his way and he stays healthy, I think he's going to be out of whatever school he goes to in 3 years. But LSU has a lot of, I think, things going for it in terms of the relationships he's been able to build with some of the staff. And A&M and Texas are doing stuff, that at a very high level too. But Colin Simmons always lights up about LSU. So I think they're going to be in it till the end. They're going to host him for an official visit the weekend of the Florida game. And from there, it'll kind of be crunch time for him. So we'll see where the chips fall. But LSU is probably going to be in it with Colin Simmons to the end. And he's just one of those highly touted guys you want to be in that position. And you just hope you can get him on board, especially at a position as key as the jack position for LSU this cycle.
Bill, a few more. I'll get you out of here. Bryce Underwood is a 5-star quarterback that put out a top 4 list that includes LSU. He's got Michigan, Bama, and Ohio State as the other schools there. What's the recruiting board look like for quarterback at LSU right now?
Yeah, you've got Colin Hurley in 2024 committed, and that's obviously done. And he's going to, be a guy that comes in and starts to compete and is coming off the Elite 11 where he had a top 10 finish, which is pretty impressive for a guy his age. But you turn your attention to 2025 like Joe Sloan has for the last 9 months really, and it's Bryce Underwood and George McIntyre, and those are the number 1 and number 2 quarterbacks on the On3 industry ranking in 2025. For Bryce Underwood, he just set his commitment date for January 6th to honor his late grandmother's birthday. And Alabama, LSU, Michigan, and Ohio State are the programs that hosted him, I think, in the last couple months or so, whether it be for camps or visits, what have you. And LSU sits in a good spot here. And I think you're probably going to see him come back for a game. I think that's the other piece that he hasn't done yet. I think he'll come back to Alabama. I think he'll go back to all four of those schools when it comes down to it. My question is, does a program like USC get involved? Because we know Lincoln Riley loves his quarterbacks, and I think that's just talking with a source is something to monitor. Where is this list going to go? Because it has been very straightforward with Bryce Underwood, which is nice. But it seems like when it comes to the number one player in the country, sometimes you see a twist or a turn. So is there going to be that twist or turn is what I'm watching for. But LSU right now is leaving the summer sitting as pretty as you can ask for as a contender goes. With George McIntyre, it's kind of the same thing. Alabama has a lot of buzz right now behind their ability to get him. Clemson taking a quarterback was key there, I think, in 2025. And then you have LSU, where George McIntyre's visited multiple times. And I think LSU's right in the mix. I think between LSU and Alabama, you almost are starting to see a path where maybe it's Underwood to one, George McIntyre to the other. That is if both of those programs can get those guys to leave, Michigan and Ohio State in Underwood's, case, and McIntyre, being recruited by Tennessee. And we'll just kind of see how it plays out. McIntyre doesn't have a decision timeline right now. There's some buzz that maybe he would make a decision. He's supposed to go to Alabama for the second time this summer at the end of July. So that's something to monitor. But it's too early to call for both, which is good. But LSU with Joe Sloan has been able to put them in position for both of those quarterbacks. And, Joe Sloan has brought a lot of high quality arms to campus for visits, whether it be to evaluate them, whether it be, they've got an offer and they've been recruiting him. And at some point you got to think he's going to be able to make one of these, 5-star, top 100 type players pay off. And maybe it's Bryce Underwood, maybe it's George McIntyre. I don't think you can go wrong with either.
Great work, Bill. Thank you as always. Great to see you. Follow him on Twitter at Billy Embody and read the work over at On3. Have a great weekend.
All right, you guys too. Thanks for having me.
Always. There he is, Billy Embody, checking in. Make sure and read the work over at the Bengal Tiger. Get your subscription over at On3 if you want to keep up with recruiting. Should be a flurry of recruits and commits coming down here after a month of work put in by the staff in the month of June. We'll keep rolling here in hour two. Come back with us. Jordy Culotta Show, built by R&B Builders.